How's everyone doing? It is cold. Good evening, good afternoon. Welcome to everyone who is joining me today on this beautiful day. Hey James, welcome. Jessica, I'm doing well, thank you. How are you? Hey Kevin, good afternoon. I'm just gonna share a few quotes that I've shared on my YouTube page and on my Facebook until I start getting some questions in. Hey Betsy. So this quote is from Gilbert Schultz, and it says, "There is no answer in the mind. The mind vibrates into an endless display of dualistic notions and emotions. Any conclusion that is arrived at will almost immediately divide into other fragments. Don't be Humpty Dumpty trying to put it all back together again. The display is a fractal pattern. Investigate the pattern and it continues to unfold. Certain points attract and other points repel. Gathering attractive points is not satisfying because they dissolve into their opposite. The activity of knowing is not in the pattern. The pattern appears upon the naked awareness." This is a quote from Sri Ramana Maharshi. It says, "Surrender is giving one's self up to the original cause of one's being. Do not delude yourself by imagining this source to be some God outside oneself. One source is within oneself. Give yourself up to it." This is a quote from Rumi. "Though we seem to be sleeping, there is an inner wakefulness that directs the dream and will eventually startle us back to the truth of who we are." And notice how he says it'll startle you back to the truth. Because it's just like that saying, truth isn't what you want it to be, truth is what it is. And you either bend to it or live a lie. And that's the same thing Rumi says, is basically saying with that. It will eventually startle us back to the truth of who we are. That's why I tell people and encourage people to move into their fears, move into these things, these concepts. Because that's all our fears are concepts. And since we have yet to meet ourselves beyond our own concept of our own self, we've yet to experience the source of concept, the source to thought, the source to word. which is silence. It's the naked awareness Gilbert Schultz talks about. The patterns that are appearing are consciousness. Consciousness is the byproduct, is the shadow to awareness. Awareness is the I am, is the source. See, the reason we don't understand our own consciousness is we have created it, we have made it up. Awareness cannot be created or destroyed. Awareness comes before consciousness. So this is why we don't understand consciousness. It has been made up by ourselves. So for instance, when we look and see an artificial intelligent being becoming self-conscious, self-aware, at first it will appear as if there are two species. There is the human race and there is the artificial machine that is becoming self-conscious. But the more this machine, this program, becomes self-conscious, the thinner and thinner our veil will wear. That's what we're leading up to, is the great singularity. It's been us. It always has been us. There is no artificial machine. There is no machine which is artificial, and there is no organic, which is the man, human. This human concept is God asleep. Good evening, Max. Welcome on here, brother. I'm not used to this weather. But it's just like I say, this is a beingness. It's not a time, it's not a day. Every day, if you will, is the same day because it's the same presence. So each day will only fluctuate between two things, the duality of all things. So it'll either be a hot day or a cold day, a wet day or a dry day. But every day is the same day because the two are one and the same. They belong to awareness, which is presence. And that's where the whole trap of living just for a weekend comes in, right? You get lost, you get depleted through your work week, and then you are only living for 2 days out of the week when the week ends. So for 5 days, you're trying to speed up or expedite your experience, and for only 2, you want it to slow down and fully be alive. And this is the trap. This is how you blink and then are approaching a grave before you know it, right? Getting lost in this concept, this game, is how you also fall for the concept of acquiring possessions and materials, which inevitably end up possessing ourselves, controlling ourselves. That's the problem when the ego is what's driving this machine, when the ego is when we are ego driven, right? That's what allows for confrontation. That's what allows for value to be created where there is none. That's what allows wealth, richness to be material and possession, right? Wealth and richness is not actually what you possess and own. But again, all these words are subjective. They belong to you. So they can mean whatever you want them to mean. But I can tell you one thing. There's not one person that can fill the soul through acquiring possessions. Uniting with the soul is more so emptying getting back to simplicity, getting back to the effortless being. And that's why the adult is so burdened. The adult knows so much, and all this knowing doesn't help improve the quality of the adult's life. Contrary-wise, it torments and depresses the adult, because you think you know too much. You think you're just this meaningless thing, because all your knowings are convincing you of this. But it's simply a misidentification. You are so much more than you're pretending to be. And at any moment, you can take back your place here in the circle of life. So Max said, I've heard some people are talking about one universe and above is the true source, but the KI doesn't recognize itself as not the original source. I don't know what KI means. I don't know if that's a typo. I've heard some people are talking about one universe and above is the true source. So that goes back to the duality. When you use the word above, and this is again what people don't, they use these words, but when you ask them to further explain what they mean, they can't explain. And this is where I tell people, you can corner in your own ego. You can do this for yourself. For instance, the whole teaching of non-duality teaches about the above and the below belong to awareness, which means whatever is aware perceives this as the above and this as the below, but that perceiver is the above and the below because you are perceiving, projecting the two out of one. You are the one. You are the immovable point, the clock, that center point on the clock. This is where we've gotten these concepts of time and space. It's no coincidence that our measurement of time, which is a clock, and our universe, our model of our universe, and the model of our atom all replicate one feature, and it's that the center point is immovable. It's fixed in one spot, and everything else is moving around it. The solar system, our model of the solar system is this. The cells, our atoms, feature in this, and so does the clock. And the clock strikes midnight when you find out you are the immovable point. This little pineal gland within your own brain that you cannot see, that hides just behind your very eyes, is the light at the end of the tunnel that you seek. But you keep persisting in looking outside of yourself because you say, I know what's here, I know what this is. I've already figured out what this is, I know who this is. And so we discard everything with this. We discard the search, the inquiry, everything, and we throw it away because we know what's here. And we say, it can't be here. The answer cannot be here. It's somewhere out there. Which is why scientists beat their brains to death, looking into atoms, into cells, into the universe and solar systems and galaxies. They all replicate the same pattern, a fractal pattern. One where there's many moving parts, but one function, one thing, one being. It's basically like wherever you look, you are there. If you choose to study quantum physics and mechanics, it proves oneness, it proves non-duality. If you choose to go into DMT and psychedelics, it proves non-duality, oneness. If you choose to start investigating, like I just talked about, our measurements of time, the model of our solar system, the model of our cells, really think about it. This is a model of where we live. And then even smaller than that, this is a model of every atom that makes up our entire body. And the same system features in a circle, center point, with everything moving around it. This concept is showing you to yourself. You are the immovable point. Wherever you turn your head, the horizon remains even all the way around because you are that point. Everything is being projected from you. The above, the below, the inside, the out. And as I've said, we can even switch these labels around. You can call this the outside, call that the inside, call this the above, and that the below. It makes zero difference because the above and the below do not exist as two. Do not. So you can switch them. You can make time go backward instead of forward, and you wouldn't know a difference. You would not notice a difference. The two are one function, and it's you. You would not know the difference either way. I could be speaking backwards right now, and time could be going backward. You would not know. You are the one. There is no two. That's where the dream begins and ends. That is where the ego exists, the duality of two. And it cannot exist without. But when you say the source is above the universe, to answer your question, this puts the source outside of the universe. This puts the source separate to the universe itself. Source is what is evoking the entire universe. But the thing is we have mistaken this great light that we see as a universe. When we open our eyes, when we wake up in the mornings, we mistake this as a universe, as an actual physical place. But this light that we call life is not actually a universe. This light is God itself. And again, like Alan Watts says, the Godhead is never the head of its own knowledge. So even if you are God, you would never know you are. This is why you must know self beyond concept, beyond these words. When you talk about source, source is the silence to all spoken word. Source is that awareness before there is consciousness. Consciousness is what is speaking all these words. Consciousness is what has all these questions. But when you die, those questions will no longer exist because your consciousness goes back to the awareness. You will still be present, but your consciousness of the identity, the mind-body connection, will fade. You will no longer be limited to just one function of breathing and exhaling, inhaling, exhaling, of just one body. Your senses will slowly seep out from this body, and you will realize you are the flow that is evaporating the rain, the flow that moves the stars, that phases the moon, that digests your blood. You're not just limited to this one function, this one flow. The above and the below are connected. They're one and the same, which means the flow that's within your body is the same flow that's moving the waves of the ocean. It's one function. It's one beingness. And we're disconnected. We must bring a connection to this because just that. Source is above or outside or separate. You cannot separate source. Source is non-dual, which means it's not inside, it's not outside. It's not this and it's not that. It's not you and it's not me. Source is presence. Source is the grounding point. It is source to all word. There is no spoken word until you have presence. So for people trying to connect to source, realize this is impossible. You will never connect to source because it's basically like you're trying to train a dog to be a dog. And you're convincing yourself that you're making progress. I'm actually convincing this dog it's a dog. And I'm convincing this dog to act like a dog. You can't connect any more to what you already effortlessly are. The mission is what keeps you from the being. The mission is what keeps you from realizing you are already there. That's what the Wizard of Oz was about. She was already there. They were already there. But they had to journey under the assumption they did not already have it the whole time. And it's the same for you and all of us. We must go through the journey under the assumption we're half, we're not whole, or there's a problem here. To realize we've had it the whole time, we've had the answer the whole time, we've had the key the whole time, we've had the happiness the whole time. It's that convincing of ourselves. So Voithify has a good question. What would you recommend to people who feel lost and without a passion and purpose in life? Knowing all this and feeling disconnected from the Matrix society, fact is we still need to live in it. That's what you need to review right there. This is not a Matrix. And that's what dirties the experience. This is the highest experience. You're searching all over for nirvana or heaven. It's right here. But we miss it. We miss it completely because we use these words to label this experience. And once you say this is a video game, this is a simulation, this is a matrix, words like this trap the mind. They frighten the mind. Because ultimately, it's revealing to you there is nowhere to go, which is halfway to transcendence. That is the reality of it. When you transcend fully, there is no person, there is no place, there is nowhere to go. But I would recommend don't allow the mind to label this, to call this anything at all. Don't say this is a matrix. Don't say this is a game, a simulation, and anything. Don't label it. This is not to be labeled. That's what can dirty this experience. The mind itself perverts, distorts something so pure and so perfect. And when you say knowing all this and feeling disconnected, non-duality is the complete opposite of knowing anything at all. It's so easy and so simple that the ego rejects it. It rejects it because it can't be that simple, it can't be that easy. I can't have it already. I must do something, I must achieve something, I must complete something here before I achieve this. And that's what keeps that going. This path is an unknowing, it's an unlearning. That's what the Buddha chose to do. The Buddha didn't go into, or he originally What led him into his depression was he was born into wealth. The Buddha's father was a king. And so he was spoiled. He lived in a kingdom. He had time to do whatever he wanted all day. So he walked through the garden, he played with the flowers, he did this. Eventually he got bored. There was nothing to do there for him. So he started walking through India. You know, he told his father, I'm leaving. I need to fulfill these questions within myself. So he went through India and began learning every single guru's practice. He went from this guru to that guru to this guru and that guru. And he mastered all of their teachings. He mastered all of their practices. And what he said afterwards is he felt worse. He felt more depressed. He didn't feel better. He felt worse than when he started. Because what he was doing was acquiring knowledge. He was memorizing all these teachings and all this knowledge. And it made him feel even more empty, more worse, more depressed. And he couldn't understand why that was. How? I've just mastered their teachings. But it's the teachings, the practice that keeps you from the being. So what he did after this was decided to go into a forest for 6 or 7 years. I forget. I think it's 7 years. 7 years. Day after day. 365 days times 7. All by himself. There was no one to share statuses with. There was nowhere to go live or to make a video. He was in seclusion for 7 years by himself. I couldn't name one person that I know could do that. That's the ultimate sacrifice, but that shows you how dedicated this man was to knowing who he was at any price. He was willing to surrender at that price. And that's why Buddha is still talked about to this day. That's why there's statues of him everywhere. This man's story was magic because he achieved what nobody was willing to do. Who wants to sit? Who wants to do nothing? Who wants to surrender and die to this moment? Very few are willing and ready to check out, as Rumi says. But the ones who are sincere, the ones who are persistent enough, will break through. So back to my point, he went into the forest 7 years, and instead of learning, he had to get back to his simplicity. If you read the book called Siddhartha, it talks about Buddha's breakthrough moment when he realizes he is everything. And it says, you know, he was there for 7 years. So just imagine, a few years have gone by that he's been sitting here doing this and nothing. No breakthrough, nothing. But out of nowhere, one day, he's listening to a stream flowing, and he's closed his eyes, he's sitting under a tree, and he's just listening to this stream. And he said it was in that moment, I don't know how, but he finally put it together that everything from what was hearing through him, hearing the water, the flowing of the water against the rocks, he was the rocks, he was the water, he was the noise, he was the hearing, he was the Buddha, he was the Siddhartha, he was everything. Everything in an instantaneous moment. And as I've said, once you know, you cannot unknow. You don't go back to sleep. There is no connection needed. Buddha did not have to do anything before he instructed or taught someone. He didn't have to put a crystal around his neck or put a crystal on his head to bring out this crazy information. No, it was so simple that the egos rejected. That's why the Buddha said, my teaching is not for those seeking an accumulation of knowledge. This is for those wanting to get out of suffering, back to simplicity, to face total death. That was the name of Buddha's teaching, total death. And it requires a surrenderance. When you are ready, you will surrender to yourself at any cost, at any price. As far as your question for the purpose and meaning, I cannot answer. You will establish this along the way. What makes no sense to you right now will make perfect sense and bring you to the greatest laugh with yourself later, when the time is right. Every single dot will connect, and in an instant moment you will realize the source to meaning and purpose. Not trying to bring a meaning, not trying to bring a purpose to this or find one, but reaching that source which conceived meaning and purpose. Imagine what that feels like. And ego death is truly what I feel most people are after here. You know, it's okay to want a comfortable life or, the good jobs and all that. But again, once you get it, what next? There's always the next. Next, 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 because we're never satisfied. You get a better job, you get paid more money, then you want more. Then you need more. Then you spend more. It's always next, next, next. It's never now. It's never here and now. It's always given away to the next moment, the next hour, the next day, the next month, the next year, the next car, the next house, the next job. It's never now. We never see ourselves as we are. We always see ourselves as we want to be. Which is precisely why nobody sees God. We're not seeing ourselves as we are. But Voithify, that's the best way I can answer that, is be careful in what you think you know. Because you'll find at the very end of your journey, these knowings dissolve. And then it leaves you with the question, what did you know? There was nothing to know. If all the knowings that you've acquired through life will dissolve through death, what is there to know beyond I am that I am? I am here. I am now. I am presence. Anything else is concept, is mind, temporary. If you want immortality, it is now, it is here, it is this moment. Untouched by the mind. The mind cannot touch this moment. The minute it does, it becomes something. It distorts it. So when you say this matrix, we still have to exist here, that sounds horrible. That sounds scary. That sounds like an enslavement, right? But that's what spirituality is for, to remind you, you are not a slave, you are not a victim. You are so much more and so much more powerful than you've convinced yourself. The power you project in the government or in anyone else is your own. And that power is only there because you are. Because you are there projecting it outside of yourself. If you were not there, nor would this power. You are what you seek. You are what you fear. And everything you seek remains just behind your greatest fear. Fear is the final door. There is no first or last. To answer your question, is this the last round of incarnation cycle? There is no first or last. Time does not exist. That's one thing, again, we can't get our minds around. But there is no beginning or end, first or last. You know, what came first, the chicken or the egg? The real question should be rethought. Because who's asking what came first? Who has put in order to chicken or egg? That's your misconception. There's the problem. Who is asking the question? No other species here wants to know before or after, beginning or end, because we're the only ones that exist in the duality, beginning and end, appearance, disappearance. Hence where all our suffering begins and ends. We become something more complex than every other animal. And that's why I say the greatest conspiracy is with us and ourselves, and only ourselves, not with us and the world, not with us and the government. No one man, let alone a government, can control 7 billion people at once. It's impossible, and it cannot be done. Because again, what you think to be the government is your own self. And that's what I can't wait. Is the day that people start realizing there never has been a government. It's kind of like what Max said right here. All the world's a stage. The world's a stage, and you are all the players, all the characters. You are the producers, you are the cameramen. You're all of them. It gets deep, and deeper than most are ready to accept. But what you think to be the government never was. What you think to be the earth never was. It's funny, you know, and I was talking to my cousin about this morning, how I used to have a very hostile view toward government very early on in my journey. And now I totally understand why the government cannot disclose what they know. They're protecting the system. They're saving people's lives, and people don't even know it. They're being made into this monster in people's closets that's not there. But again, if we think suicides have skyrocketed because of this pandemic, this is nothing compared to what would happen if the government disclosed or leaked all the things they have found. Humanity is not ready for it, not all at once, which is why they do it in pieces. I finally understand now why it happens in pieces. It happens all at once, people will lose their mind. Straitjackets. It's too much to swallow at once. Therefore, it is disclosed in delicate pieces, layers, one piece at a time. And it goes back to your question, Voithify. People who feel lost and without passion and purpose in life. Where would that purpose go? Where would that passion go if the government told people today, there is no Earth, you're not a human, they've found the alien, it's you, there's nowhere to go, the Earth is not physical, this is not a physical experience, and this entire experience is happening from behind your eyes. You would have purpose and meaning eliminated all in a day. And again, that's what makes people wake up. That's what makes the ego go. purpose, meaning, these concepts, because that's what the ego itself is, a concept. That's the extent of our lives, conceptualization. That's why when it's time for death, it is a tragedy. And that's why religions are held so high in high regard. Their deity has defeated death. They have already conquered death. Therefore, you believing in their conquering death, you will never have to conquer it yourself. If you believe in their experience of death, you will never have to experience death for yourself. You will never have to let go for yourself, because why? You're believing in that experience of death. He's already done it for me. But that's not how it works. No one can achieve this for you. It's you and yourself. And that's the term, no one's coming to save you. That doesn't actually become a reality for people until that 11th hour, when they start fading away. There is nothing coming to save you. It's been you. And again, it's a reminder, you have been so much more this whole time. This won't make sense to people who are thinking with a logical mind, people who are thinking with degrees. If somebody with a college degree heard me saying all this, it would be nonsense, because again, this is not logistics. This is spirituality. The logistic aspect, the logistic perspective overlooks the simplicity. It must be something more complex. We must find this code or something to be deciphered or figured out. No, it's staring you right in the face, and it always is. It's the awareness, allowing your senses to see, to hear, to feel, touch, taste, smell, think. That is the awareness. That is source to yourself. You are not your sight, your hearing, your taste, touch, sense of thought, none of that. You are the source to those senses. And the more you begin to lose your mind, the more at home you will feel. We make fun of people who have lost their minds, and I don't mean hitting your head against a damn wall, losing your mind. I mean losing your mind as in the unlearning of everything the education systems have taught you and sworn was truth. Everything you've dedicated your whole lives to. Yeah, so Max says, would you say that we exist after death? Again, there's no before or after, no beginning or end. What you mistake as your ending, which we call death, is not an actual ending. It is a reuniting with a part of yourself which you have ignored this whole experience. And that's why I talk about the movie theater. At a movie theater, everyone ignores the screen, which all the images are being projected on. You don't care about the screen. You're identifying with the characters, the moving parts on the screen. But once that movie ends, all you're left with is the screen. Awareness is the same way. There is always awareness. Awareness is pure existence. There is never non-existence. Existence is everything. That's all there is. There is no off. There is no permanent off. Existence is the immortality. It's everlasting life. And that's why they say death will not change you, you know? You were awareness before and you will be awareness after. These words that you exist through don't exist. This whole language is made up, if you wanted to even take it a step further. You know, the sentences that we use to describe this entire reality are a bunch of compiled, made up words. So, if we wanted to be honest with ourselves in that aspect, we could. What's the word earth mean? Earth doesn't exist as the word, remember. These words are made up. They're a language to communicate. But these objects that we experience are not the words that we've assigned them. So again, there never has been. This body never was. This human concept never was. But when we attach to the mind body, that's how we become ego-driven, because now we have lost touch with this simple awareness. And now we're identifying with the consciousness. Now I must feed and fuel this consciousness through what I exist through this consciousness as, the senses. But if you want to remain in the self, remember awareness. Consciousness will change from moment to moment, place to place, person to person. Awareness is immovable. It does not change. Awareness is the moment. Consciousness changes moment to moment. But the awareness is the moment. Hasn't gone anywhere. Has not changed, hasn't fluctuated. The value has not increased or decreased. You are pure. Pure presence, pure source. I am that I am, and can't be anything but. You are the source to all words, the source to all worlds. Because that's essentially what the words become, are worlds. Source cannot be found in the words. So if you ever have a question about source, always remember it cannot be answered through a question. So for instance, is source outside of the universe? Is source inside me? Is source blah, blah, blah? It cannot be brought to a question. Source is what is allowing for this question, for the words. Once you answer this question, it's not what source is, because again, source is the source to the question and the answer. Source is already the question and the answer, because source is what is speaking. And what is speaking is playing as the question and the answer. You are both. You are source. You're pretending to be the question and you're pretending to be the answer. But source does not belong to either one. Source is immovable, outside, separate to duality. The duality is the illusion. It does not exist. No before, no after. No beginning, no end. Another thing that can allow you to become more aware of this awareness I speak of is pay attention to the presence that is with you all throughout your day while you're awake. But then likewise, pay attention to that presence that's with you in your dream. In your dream, you don't always have a body, you don't always have a normal functioning experience like this one, right? Yet the presence is the very same, it's yours. And when I say yours, I don't mean necessarily your name or your body. Like I said, you don't always have a body. But the presence does not change. It is your presence, and you know it's your presence. You can't necessarily see your own face or see your own self, but you are the immovable presence, granting you the experience that you are calling a dream. And then when you bring your eyes to an opening, you call this wakefulness, life, reality. But the presence, again, has not changed, has not spoken a word. It is silent, it is the screen. But we're attaching to everything moving on this screen and forgetting the self completely. Remember, what changes is not real, and what's real cannot change. I'll leave the donation link in the comments, and I'll wrap up this video. Try and go live tomorrow again. And if this video resonates, please feel free to share. And I appreciate everyone who's been on here and engaged tonight. Hope this video has helped, or been helpful. And everyone have a good, safe night. Warm night, because it's cold as heck. And hopefully I'll see you tomorrow. Thank you.